Welcome to the Dad Nation podcast, where men go from good to great in their life and love. Now more than ever, our world needs strong, courageous, and compassionate men, because we believe that when the dad gets better, the whole family wins. Now, this movement is called Dad Nation, but ultimately this is for the wives, the children, and the generations to come, because we also believe that every wife and child deserves a father who is pursuing greatness. I am your host, Mitchell Osman, and I am so grateful and I'm humbled that you've chosen to spend your most precious resource, which is your time, with me today. Listen, today we've got another incredible episode for you, so let's get into it. Well, welcome to the Dad Nation podcast. Graham Cochrane. It's so good to have you here. And before we jump in, I just want to read your bio so that the listeners who are tuning in, who maybe haven't heard of you or your story before, they'll just get to know a little bit about your accomplishments and the things that you've done. So Graham Cochrane is a highly acclaimed entrepreneur, USA Today best-selling author, and keynote speaker with a track record of building successful online businesses. He's also the host of the Graham Cochrane Show, which is a top 0.5% ranked podcast globally, where each week he helps people create more money, margin, and meaning in their lives. And as a multi-time seven-figure business owner, online business owner, Graham has established himself as a leading figure in digital entrepreneurship and personal development, and is dedicated to strategically aligning online business owners with their true potential, empowering them to feel fulfilled and invigorated by their work through tailored strategies and innovative solutions. His insights have been regularly featured in national media outlets like Forbes, CNBC, Business Insider, and more. So, hey, Graham, thank you so much for being on the show today. I know you're going to have a ton to share with my guys, and I know you're going to bring a ton of value. So thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, man. Glad to be here. Love what you're doing.
Awesome. Well, it's clear you've got a great bio. You've done a lot in your life, but for the people who aren't familiar with your story, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Like, I know, you're married with kids and all those things, but also along with that, like, what's your Genesis story? And I know you may have told this 1,000 times, but I know it's going to be inspiring to the guys listening. So why don't you just tell us a little bit more, man? What got you to here, like the Coles Notes version?
Yeah, I mean, my dream was always to be a professional musician. I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be in music videos. I wanted to tour the world. I was a singer-songwriter. And I was pretty much focusing my whole life on that, high school, college, trying to get a record deal. And the short story is, even after putting together an album, I had a lot of support. I had mentors who were trying to get me connected with labels. We shopped an album around, and I wasn't getting anything that was a substantial offer. There was something called a development deal, which I was offered, which basically means we'll sign you, but we don't want to pay you. So it's like, keep doing what you're doing, but when you start making money, we've already got you on the roster, and then we know you're a winner. And I was engaged to Shay, my then fiance and now wife of almost 20 years at the time. And we were coming out of college, and I was like, I need the advance money. Like, I need this to be my job. I can't drag my wife through, or my future wife through, moving around and touring and just continuing to try the dream. And so I remember coming up against this moment of decision, man, like, is this not going to happen? Or do I have to really choose between being a husband and trying to take care of my wife, or pursuing the dream? It felt like an unfair, impossible choice. And so I chose providing for her versus the dream. And I kind of let the dream die. And I write about this a bit in Rebel, my latest book, but I floundered for 4 years because I had no backup plan. I mean, like, I didn't know what else I was going to do. I got a degree, but it was just a music degree, an audio engineering degree, because it was all aligned with, I'm just going to go do music. So I floated for 4 years. And I think a lot of men feel like there's that wandering wilderness season of if you're a good man, you want to provide for whatever your family looks like, or even if it's just for yourself, you want to take care of yourself. But so you'll do whatever. But when you're like a square peg in a round hole, when it's not the right fit for you. And that was me for 4 years, till age 26. We moved 1,000 miles away from home. We moved from Virginia to Tampa, Florida, where we are now, to help some friends start a church. And we were going to get jobs and just try a new life down here. And we bought our first house. We had our first daughter, Chloe. She was born. And then I lost my second job in 10 months. And so then my journey of like life just fell backwards even further. So I was on food stamps for 18 months. Uh, had no idea what I was doing. And I felt like there was a season that God was calling me to start a business. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't have any business acumen. And I just began a journey of doing whatever I knew how to do. And so the skill I had was music and music recording. And I started a freelance company that turned into, I started a YouTube channel and a blog to get leads for that. And then that turned into a content business. And it's just kind of been this crazy, like I never would have chased this dream because it didn't exist. Like YouTube didn't exist. Content creators and influencers and the creator economy, whatever you want to call it, did not exist when I was a kid. So I didn't realize even then when I was building it, the industry didn't exist. It was like some people doing it, but nobody called it anything. We didn't know what it was. So that's the long story of like my first business with in the music space coming out of my love for music, but I just found a way to monetize it in a different way. Found I had different skill sets that were valuable to the marketplace. And it's been a wild ride from the music business to business coaching to authoring books to speaking. It's all just been kind of an iteration and evolution of what I was doing before.
Hmm. Well, that's cool, man. And it's so funny how you just kind of fall into the step and fall in the next step, and you're just like, you like as you said, you could have never dreamed that you'd be here today, or that was never the plan. That's but it's wild, the journey that you've been on that brought you here today. And I think that's part of the reason why I connected with you in the beginning, was because, I just want to say, man, I just want to publicly thank you and acknowledge you for the great work that you've done. But a little bit of my story was, I had a friend of mine who was in the audio engineering space. He was talking about this guy, Graham, who was doing work. And he was talking to me. He said, "You got to check this guy out. He's got a story that's kind of similar to yours." And so anyways, I started listening to your podcast, I believe, and I'm like, this guy moved across the country to like help plant a church and get involved in the worship ministry, has a music degree. And I was like, that's exactly what I did. And then I was thinking, as I was listening to you, and then you published the book, How to Get Paid for What You Know, which we'll talk about. But in that moment, when I started reading that book, I had this moment of clarity, because I'll never forget where I was. I was vacationing with my wife, and we were camping, and we were in an RV. And I cracked open your book, and one of the first lines, I think it was in the introduction, you said was, "You're sitting on a gold mine," right? And it hit me. And for the first time in my life, I connected with that reality that I could monetize what was going on between my ears. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I had said that to my wife so many times before. I had said, I have so much passion and knowledge, and I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to use it to help and to serve other men, but I know I want to. I just don't know. I don't have the steps. And so what I loved about your book is that it actually walked me through the step-by-step process on how to get paid for your passions and your knowledge. And it was the first time I'd heard that term, knowledge commerce, which I'd love for us to get into at some point here. But I say all that to say, I went on to use your book and then some of your courses to actually use your principles to launch my business. I used a lot of your principles to write my sales copy for my website, launch the podcast, launch my coaching community, my programs. And today, I'm actually living that dream. And so it's really cool, dude. It's like a full circle moment to come back and be able to say, dude, I know your product works because I'm living proof of that. And so I just want to say thank you personally for all the work that you've done, because you literally have changed my life with what you've done. And you've changed the lives of, I know, thousands of others as well. So thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh man, my pleasure. Dude, kudos to you because millions of people will pick up a book this year and very few of them will actually open the book. And then even fewer of them will read beyond chapter 2. And then even fewer of those will actually do anything in the book. And I think a book can change your life. I mean, that's a $25 book. And you've used it to unlock, how countless dollars and lifestyle enhancement and joy and impact. It's like the it's like a seed in the ground, but the seed doesn't do anything if you don't put it in the ground. And so the book doesn't do anything if you don't put it in the ground of your action and your willingness to do something with it. So kudos to you for actually applying it, and then
Mm.
you're reaping the harvest, man. So it's so cool to see.
Yeah, man. And honestly, I'm really good at buying books. I'm not that great at reading them all. You know what I mean? That's a
Yeah,
skill of mine. I love buying books.
me too, man.
But yours was one book that you're right, took the seed took root. And so I would say anybody who's listening to the show, I know, 99% of the people who listen are men, fathers, husbands. I know a lot of men who are kind of wandering, like you were saying, trying to find their place, trying to find their sweet spot. If you're listening to this, I mean, this book is whatever it is, $25. I would say it's not 10x, it's over 100x that in value. At least that's what I've gotten and more. So I would say do what I did and just get a hold of the book and a lot of your other content, which we'll get to at the end of the episode, and to kind of share where we can find you. Oh, another funny story. I've got a buddy who's a business professor, and we were talking over coffee one night, and he was struggling with this new curriculum, and I told him about your book, and gave him a copy, and he read it. He's like, "I'm ditching my entire curriculum, and I'm going to buy all the students a copy of this book, and I'm just going to teach Graham's principles." And so,
Wow.
literally, he's been teaching the principles out of your book because it's so simple and so timeless. And he's
Wow.
teaching business students, and he's just telling everybody about your book and your content and just giving
Wow.
it out. So that's a testament, right, to a
Wow.
business professor who's actually saying, "Hey, this is real life, practical strategies you can implement," right? So thought you'd be encouraged to know that.
Yeah, man. That's so wild. Thank you so much. It's so cool.
So I'd love to just actually, and I've been reading through Rebel, and Rebel is your new book. If you're watching on audio, I'm flashing it up in front of me right here. But I actually love to dig into that one. But first,
Yeah.
just as we're talking about how to get paid for what you know, there is one thing, this knowledge commerce concept. And could you just unpack that a little bit? Because when I read about that, I didn't even really understand that until, you taught about it. I think a lot of people don't necessarily even understand what that means and how it works. But obviously you wrote the book on it. So how would you explain knowledge commerce, and why would somebody like in the world, in today's generation and society where there's knowledge seemingly everywhere,
Yeah.
why would someone pursue like what is knowledge commerce, and why would somebody even get into that industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the idea of knowledge commerce, I think that term was originally coined by Kajabi's internal team. Maybe they've all been trying to. Kajabi's a software tool that we use to sell courses or run our businesses online. But it's such a growing, changing industry, whatever we're in, and there's so many facets of it that are different but similar that it's hard to label what it is. So for a while, people were calling it knowledge commerce. Now some people are calling it creator commerce because they want to include like entertainment people, like a Mr. Beast or someone that's just they're not teaching anything, but they're sharing content. They're a creator. So the language is always changing. So it depends on what you do with it. But the concept is simple: is that we're in an era where it's interesting. You used to have to go to certain gatekeepers to get information. So you would get your news from the TV stations or the newspapers. There would be magazines or trade magazines or publications. There'd be schools. I mean, knowledge was taught in certain places that you went to get it. You have to get a degree. And then you got the internet, and then it became like for years, people were just sharing knowledge, and it was this crazy, awesome thing. But it was a select few people who realized the value in basically taking the same model of the university, which people pay astronomical amounts of money to go learn stuff, and just doing it at a much cheaper scale and to everyone else in the world at the same time online. So the idea of taking what I know and putting into a video course, which is like just like a virtual class, and charging for it makes so much sense because you got to go learn it somewhere anyway. So some things were replacing what we learn at school, but then really it opened up a whole world for people to teach and share what they know and monetize it in an area that there wouldn't be a school for it. So for example, like if you're a fitness instructor, like all you could really do back in the day was work at a gym or be a fitness coach, maybe have some private clients. or you sell some product and you can add some fitness stuff around it. So you sell supplements, or it's an MLM, or you whatever, you sell gym equipment. But nowadays you could literally just build your own tribe of people on the internet who want to learn how to get in shape from you. And so you're basically teaching what you know in and you're using it in two ways. One, to attract an audience. So that's the stuff you teach for free. And then you sell your knowledge on the back end. And so the shift there is like you give a ton of stuff away to grow your audience. That's what everyone sees. So we think like influencer, we think an Instagram person, like we think a TikToker. But what we don't see, and a lot of these people don't have it figured out, they think their job is just to grow an audience and sell a brand deal or something. The real knowledge commerce people have a real business. They're using their knowledge to attract their tribe. And then the people that really start to know them, like them, trust them, who want to go deeper. So for example, if you enjoyed my content about the business stuff, you're like, man, this guy, I think he could help me. Oh, he's got a course that would like teach me everything. And I don't have to go watch a bunch of random videos on the internet. I can have it all in one place. I can sit down, do it, do the workbooks, do it, everything. Like, and it's like however many hours of putting it, like everything's there. Like I'll pay for that because it's like the clear path. And that's what we're selling. That's one thing we're selling. Sometimes we're selling community. Sometimes we're selling private coaching or implementation. There's a lot of ways to sell your knowledge. But in essence, this is the boom of online business that I think a lot of people even today miss because they think it's just get a big following, get paid off of ads or brand deals. And they're missing what I teach is an entirely different business model. It's happening all over the world. It looks similar to the outside world. Like if I talk to people on an airplane, what do you do? They have no idea what I'm talking about. But if I say I make YouTube videos, they go, oh, I got that. That makes sense. But they think a certain thing in their mind. But I have a very different business model on the back end. So that's what knowledge commerce is to me, is everybody knows something that's valuable to someone else. All you have to do is mine that gold that you're sitting on in your brain, package it up in a certain way, and attract the people that are interested in that. Not everybody cares about learning. My first business was teaching music recording, audio engineering for home studio guys, people on a budget. They're not ever going to work in a professional studio. That's very niche, but there's millions of people on the planet that are interested in that. And so I could build a business around that, and you can build a business around absolutely anything.
Yeah. I love that. And you're right. There is a giant misconception is that if you think, if I could just get, 100,000 followers, then I can make money. But there are a lot of people with 6-7 figure followers and are not monetizing it at all. And there are a lot of people with 10, 12, 13,000 followers who are making very much monetizing it, right? And so it's all about, that niche, like you were saying, and packaging something and understanding that those who do follow you know you, like you, trust you, right? Which is another principle that I believe you taught me at one point for a podcast episode that I thought, okay, so it's not about having a giant following, right? It's about fine tuning who that target demographic, that avatar is, and really meeting a very specific need, and so that you are the one place that they want to go to, and really, when people ask me about it, I usually just say, hey, it's information, but it's organization and it's implementation. Like it's those 3 steps. You can get information anywhere. You can get a diet plan, you can get a marriage course, you can whatever, but it's organized in a way that the steps make sense, and it's someone who's holding you accountable to help you implement that thing, right? And so that, in my opinion, is why you can cut through the noise, because we all know there's so much noise, right? So thanks for sharing that, man. I appreciate it. And I've seen it true in my life as well. Can we jump into Rebel?
Yeah, man.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
Because this book is less about principles and growth strategies in business, and more just like how to stand out, how to. The whole subtext is find yourself by not following the crowd. And I talk to a lot of men who struggle in their identity. They struggle with their self-confidence. They struggle with who they are in the world, in their careers, how they show up as a husband, as a father. A lot of lost guys, man. They just don't know who they are these days. And I love a couple things. So if you don't mind, I'd love to just extract some things that resonated with me and have you expound on them a little bit. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, let's go.
So first chapter, you talk about the two-way mirror of meaning, right?
Mm.
So I think that's such a cool concept, and I think we all fall victim to that in many ways, in many avenues in our lives. So can you explain what that means for anybody listening?
Yeah, this is a way I think about how life works and why it's so hard to get good advice from other people. So if you imagine a two-way mirror where depending on which side of the glass you're standing, it looks different. From one side, you can see through it like a window, but if you're standing on the other side, it looks like a reflective glass or a mirror, right? Like in a police station. And so this is how I imagine life works is when we're trying to do this deep inner work, people who listen to your show, Mitchell, they want to figure this stuff out. They want to figure out who they are. They want to become the man they feel like they're meant to be. And they're like, I'm ready to do some of this deep inner work and look at myself in the mirror metaphorically. The problem with life is that we're standing on the see-through side. So when we think we're trying to look in the mirror, it's really hard to see ourselves because all we do is see through to everybody else on the other side. So we're constantly comparing. It's so much easier to think of all the other guys or men or people that you aren't like because you think about them, you see them all the time. You rarely see yourself for who you are. You see everybody else so much more easily. And so that's a problem. And then the problem is expounded on the fact is that if you ever go to a trusted friend or a pastor or a counselor or even your spouse or someone, a coach, and you ask them to tell you like, who am I? Like that the Zoolander moment when he looks in the puddle at his reflection, he says, who am I? And his reflection looks up at him. He's like, I don't know. You know, that you have that Zoolander moment. You're like, who am I? I'm thinking about trying this new thing or quitting my job or starting a business or moving 1,000 miles away or leading my family in this way. I'm not sure. What do you think about this? The problem is, even though these are trusted people, everyone else in the world is on the other side of the mirror. It's reflective. So when they look back at you, they don't see you. They see themselves.
Mm.
It's so easy for them to see themselves and hard for them to see you. So they'll give you advice like, hey, here's what I would do. Here's what we did. This is how I think about it, which may be valuable, but it's not going to tell you who you are because they aren't you. And so you're like, yeah, that makes sense. I see you. And then all you see is yourself anyway. So it becomes this feedback loop where you never really see yourself for who you truly are. I do believe 100% in counseling, like literal counseling, coaching, mentors, having people speak into your life. Don't live in isolation. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is other people can't give you your identity. I mean, personally, like as a man of faith, I believe that only God can give you your identity. And then really it's this deep inner work with you and him and yourself to figure out, like you can figure out who you actually are if you quiet all the external noise and the internal noise, which is a huge part of what we talk about in Rebel as well. It's just a scary process because no one's going to help you do it. But once you know more of who you are, then I feel like you can step into these conversations to get good counsel and you can filter that counsel through your identity and your calling and your purposes. So that's the problem we set up with the two-way mirror of meaning.
Brilliant, man. Brilliant. And I think that's a big realization for a lot of people. Men look to a lot of different things, other men, other influencers or other people of influence, even within their families, and say, well, what are you doing? Or what did they do? And then I should do that. And, sometimes I'll tell people like, your family, though they love you, they may not give you the best advice, or your friends, right? Now, they're great people, but it's the fact that they love you so much is that they may give you some misguided advice because they care about you and they want you to play it safe. They don't want you to take risks. They don't want you. So they are filtering their advice with like, don't start that business because I care about you and I don't want to see you stressed out. I don't want to see you taking these chances. And so when I talk with these men, it's that like, yes, qualify your feedback, right? Understand where it's coming from. But at the end of the day, you need to understand that only you know what's best for you, right? And I think what I love about that analogy is we so often see that play out in our marriages and the rest of our lives, when making career decisions, when even parenting. You think about all these major areas of our lives, and we use the two-way mirror, and that's it gets us. It can really filter things, I think, and push us in the wrong direction sometimes. You're speaking about these external pressures and internal pressures and things, and I know in chapter 2, you talk about conformity, right, and the invisible force that's holding you back. Now, I believe that we're living in a world, and we always have, but certainly now it's more probably pronounced than it used to be with all the highlight reels. But live in a world of facades and masks, and people just kind of putting it up on the ground because it looks great, but you don't necessarily see what's going on the inside. And so, this idea of this force that are holding us back as men, as fathers, as husbands, as leaders in our workplaces, things like that. Can you explain sort of what that force is, and unpack that a little bit from what how your book explains it?
Yeah, so think about it like a stick in a stream. There's a stream and the water is flowing. The current of culture is flowing in a direction. It's just everyone's going in a direction whether they realize it or not. And you are in the stream. I'm in the stream. And so if we're just complacent in life or we're just tired in life and we don't have time to think about this stuff, we may not feel like we're taking action or doing anything, but we're actually are going somewhere. We're being carried along like a stick just sitting in the stream wherever the culture is going. So conformity is that stream moving in one direction. And that culture is like the big capital C culture of your country, of the world, but it's also the micro cultures of your friend group, your family, your church, the people you follow on social media, whatever it is, like you're being influenced and you're becoming like them, whether you like it or not. So the question we have to ask is that current is neither good nor bad if we like where it ends up. If you like where it's going, then great. Then you just chill. You're going to get exactly what you wanted. But you have to decide, is that what you want? You have to actually step out of the little stream of the river, on the little banks of the river for a second, look around and say, okay, everyone's going this way. Do I like how that's looking? Like everyone's marriage is going this way. Do I like how that's going? The way people handle money is going this way. Do I like how that ends up for them in 20 years? Everyone's choice of career and killing their dreams and doing what's safe and pays the most money looks like this. Do I like the way that's turning out for them? Do they look happy? And you're just assessing and you get to decide. And if you don't like the way that's looking, you have to decide, okay, well, where do I want to go? And the problem with that is sometimes we don't know what we want. And so we do some of that work in the book. But a lot of times I think if we're real honest and we don't overthink it, we know where we would like to go metaphorically, literally. We'd like to raise our family a certain way, have a certain different financial situation, do a certain different type of work, maybe live in a different place, whatever it would be. It's just that everyone's going that way. So you don't want to be the outcast. We want to be accepted. We don't want to be judged. We don't want to deal with the conversations. I mean, bro, when I started my business, again, I'm unemployed. We're getting paid by the government for our groceries. And I hated those conversations around the holidays, those first 2 years of, well, have you gotten a job yet, Graham? These are family members.
Yeah.
Have you gotten a job yet? No, Grandma, I still haven't gotten a job. Okay. I still haven't gotten a job 16 years later, but we're fine. We're fine, Grandma. But I just hated the awkward conversations of they just wanted me to be safe, but safety isn't thriving, right? Your brain even wants you to be safe. This is why you have to hack your brain, because your brain just is wired for safety. It's not wired for joy. It's not wired for dream outcomes. It's wired for safety. So everything's wired for you, keep you safe, or like they just don't like it when you're different. People are subconsciously offended when you do something different because they're like, well, what does that say about me? Should I be doing that? And you don't have to be offensive for that to take place. And so I think we know this intuitively. Anytime you've done something different, you feel that friction. And we want to be liked. We want to be accepted. And I also think, Mitchell, is that at the end of the day, we're so tired in life. You come home from work, especially if you have a wife or kids, like you're extra tired because you're just interacting and you're trying to serve, and like you don't have any energy left to make these deep decisions of like, what do you want out of your life? Even if you could buy this book and you could have it on your shelf and be like, I just don't even have the energy to read it, let alone do it. And so what we do is we end up abdicating our decision making. Like we think we're not making a decision, but we are. We're deciding by default to live like them, be like them, and we're going to get the exact same outcomes they have. And I don't know if that's what everybody wants. So the challenge in the book is conformity sucks because it's not looking good. Unless you like the way it's turning out, then just stay in the stream. But otherwise, you got to decide where you want to go in life and what matters to you and your family. And then you have to go design it and push that path, even though everyone else is going to be waving at you saying, hey, you should be going this way.
So good, man. You're preaching, bro. I love it. I love it. So many, and I see this so much and so often. Guys get caught in this trap of reliving the same year over and over, the same struggles in their marriage, the same 50 pounds they can't seem to lose. It's the same mental barriers, the insecurity, the, emotional challenges, whatever. And it's because we just are sticks in a stream. And we know whatever the statistic is, 95% of our decisions we make in a day are subconscious. And so until we actually break free of that and learn to make conscious decisions, we're just going to keep seeing the same results year over year. And so that's what I love about some of these, the book that we're referencing, but your book and some of the other things is they take you out and actually force you to ask questions about where you are and where you're going. And then and only then do you kind of break free from the matrix, if you will, and then
Yep.
just kind of like shake your head and be like, am I where I want to be? Am I the
Mm.
man that I feel that I'm called to be or that I know that I should be? And when you get honest and real with yourself, that answer is often not what we want. And so to break free from that, it's so important to ask some of these critical questions. So I love that, dude. I love that concept of having the courage to step out and not conform, but to be bold in your approach and how you approach life, right? So thank you. And you know what, dude? I think it's refreshing. It's refreshing when you see somebody who is living authentically, who is someone who's unapologetically themselves and
Yep.
they're about what they're about. And it's exciting. And some people may feel intimidated by that, which is that pressure that we feel. But dude, it's two ways. Like I've never felt more alive and on fire since I've actually truly stepped into that. And I've had other people reach out and say, "Man, there's a new energy to your countenance, that
Yeah.
wasn't there before." But that's what happens, man, when you step out and go against the current. So love that, man. Hey, friend, thank you so much for tuning in to the Dad Nation podcast today. And because you're here, I want to give you a free gift for listening. And this is called Igniting Intimacy. 44 questions to ask your wife to connect deeply and spark intimacy. Maybe you're watching this and you just feel like conversation is just growing real boring in your marriage. Or maybe you've heard from your wife that she feels like she's married to a robot, or that we don't ever talk anymore, or you don't talk about how you feel. If you've heard any of these things from your wife or felt any of these things, you need to download this free gift for you, because listen, the key to connection with your wife is through quality conversation and quality questions. Okay, I promise this will not disappoint. So check out the show notes below on YouTube or whatever streaming platform you're listening on, or you could just head to dadnationcode.com/intimacy for that free gift for you, my friend. Okay, let's get back to the episode. You have, in chapter 6, you give a life change formula. You go through believe, think, feel, do. And I love this. You have this wait morning method, right? So wisdom, affirmation, imagination, and thankfulness. So real quick, could you unpack that for us just a little bit in a couple minutes of like how that life change formula works? Because that's a big statement, right? Life change formula. That's all right.
Yeah.
What is it? I want to know what that is, So can you unpack it for us a little bit?
Yeah, I actually learned that specific language from a friend and coach of mine years ago, Julia Woods. So giving her credit, but it's the first time it made sense to me, because to your point, most people live the same year over and over again, and we're like, why can't I get to a different destination in my health journey, in my relationship journey, my financial journey? And even if you try, like I tried going to the gym, or I tried date nights with my wife. Like I tried some of that, the hack my way into it. We think do this action and then it'll start to spiral us into a good spiral. And I think there's some truth to like changing your state. Like you can literally do certain things, like smile for 30 seconds, like bite on a pencil, right? The whole Tony Robbins thing, like just bite on this pencil for 30 seconds. And then you can change your state really quickly, but it's not like lasting life change. So the premise is that if you ever want to accomplish anything in your life, or ultimately be the person that God designed you to be, it all starts with belief. And like literally, what do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about others? What do you believe about the world around you? I mean, you could just look during COVID, during election cycles, people's belief systems dictate what they do and what they get out of their life. And people believe very different things. And you don't even have to believe something that's real sometimes for it to change your life drastically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, in a real sad example, and I'm sorry if this is a sensitive topic, but it came to mind. I never thought of it this way. People who attempt or successfully pursue suicide, that is a devastating action that came from it tracks all the way up to a belief. There is at some point there's a belief shift that life would be better if I'm not in it, or this is the only way to escape the pain. It's a belief, and that's changing their thoughts, what they think about every day, changes their how they feel, which is their emotions. It's transferred into their body, and our feelings dictate what we do. We're feeling creatures, even if we're not high on the emotional stuff. Like I suck at emotions, but we're human beings. We're very feeling. So we say we think we're logical and rational because we can think, but we act out of emotion, how we feel. And so it's like, do you just reverse engineer that? What changes our feelings? Well, what we think about every day. Well, what changes our thoughts? What we ultimately believe. So if I believe that I don't have what it takes to be an entrepreneur, and I believe that it's risky to be an entrepreneur, what if you don't make money? What if my family? Okay, that's a story that I'm writing, a narrative I'm choosing to believe. Could be true, could not be true, doesn't matter. But if I believe that it's true, that it's risky, and I don't have what it takes, then the thoughts that are going to come from that are, yeah, like some certain people are good at this, it's just not me. And I'll never be able to have a business, and it's just gonna be too risky, and I should just have a job. And then my feelings will change. And then ultimately I'm gonna do the things that keep me safe. I'm never gonna step into it. But if you flip that, and I believe, you know what? I can start a business that's successful and it won't be risky. I actually believe it's riskier to have a W-2 job because you could get let go at any point and you have no autonomy in that. You don't have any decision making. But if I own my business, I can always pivot, or I believe it's safer and I'm going to be good at this. And then I'm going to think about it more. And those thoughts are going to have me feel like excited about this thing and have a positive reaction to it. And I'm going to be more likely to go do the next step, which is maybe read a book or take a course or talk to my friend that's got a successful business. How did you start your business? And it all starts with belief. And so the exciting thing about this is that you can completely change your marriage. You can change your relationship with your kids. You can change your finances. You can change your health. You can change your work situation, your spiritual life. These are the 6 core areas. You can change all of those things today by believing new beliefs, writing a new story. It involves analyzing your previous story that you're telling yourself, which we talk about in the inner story audit section. But belief changes everything. And you don't have to worry about the steps. You don't have to worry about feeling excited about it. You don't have to conjure up fake feelings. You have to just start to think different thoughts that are based around different beliefs, and it just trickles down from there.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you're going back to kind of what we said in the beginning with your first book. Everything, you're sitting on a gold mine. Your ability to change the trajectory of your family, of your life, of your career, of your, it all starts with what's in between your ears, and I think that has been one of the most profound, and it never gets old to me, the infinite sort of, not infinite, but the power that you tap into when you understand what's capable when you change your beliefs, but that requires questioning, right? So I love that, man. And how does doing relate to your beliefs? How would you say, like, because as men, we like to take action. That's part of it, right? Get out of the head into the body, all those different things. So what role does actually taking action have to do with changing your thoughts? And does that make sense? How does that play? How does it play out?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, nothing happens until action's taken, right? But how do you know what actions to take? And how do you have the fortitude to have sustained action in the right direction for the outcome you want? That all comes back to your belief system. And so the most important step or action you could take to change your beliefs is to do probably an inner story audit, which is a simple questioning of what is the story that's on repeat in your mind. We wake up every day. Like, for example, one of my inner stories that I still am trying to battle is that Shay, my wife, Shay doesn't support me and is not really super interested in what I do. Like, It's interesting how it's like it sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud. So that's part of why writing it down or saying it out loud is so instructive because you're like, whoa, do I really believe? And is that really true? But when we get into arguments sometimes, or if I get frustrated, I realize there's a story I've told myself because my wife is not a words of affirmation person, so she'll never tell me how great I am. She doesn't really want to talk about work with me, uh, and I've been doing this stuff for so long. She seems so unimpressed that I make up a story that she doesn't really support me. Like she just tolerates what I do, and she's like, eh. But all these other people, they think I'm great. And like you can imagine how hard of a story that is for your marriage because it's going to me put walls up against her. She hasn't actually said that or done anything wrong, and now I'm going to like all these other people better because they like me and they support me and they say nice things to me. And so this is just a silly example, but a real example of a story that plays out in my marriage that I've had to like literally write down. Like the story I'm telling myself about Shay is that she doesn't support me, isn't impressed with me, blah 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 blah. So you write it down, and then you ask yourself is there anything else that could be as true, if not more true than that statement?
Mm.
So it's an open-ended way of not like saying, well, that can't be true. Like, okay, sure, maybe that is true. Can you think of something else that might be as true, if not more true than that statement? And I like that question because that question puts you in curiosity versus judgment. So your judgment is like, it's this or that. I already know it's that, it's this. And we live in judgment all the time because it makes us feel safe. It makes us feel decisive and it's faster, honestly. But we limit our options when we do that. When we get curious about, what else could be as true, if not more true than that statement, you have to think. And you have to use that imagination that you reference. And then you start to realize, well, it could be just true that, well, I know she's not a words of affirmation person. So she probably thinks, she could think a thought about me, but just doesn't say it because that words don't mean anything to her, but they do to me. And so I just sort of go through this process of challenging the thoughts and just getting curious. I'll allow myself to keep that story if I want it. I could keep believing that story. Maybe that is true, but maybe there's something else that's as true, if not more true. And that's that's the action you can take is start to challenge your beliefs and then decide ultimately what do you want to believe to be true? It's fascinating. And if you have kids, you see this, what you believe about your kids and it becomes true in a weird way. Like if you project like, man, you never clean your room, they'll probably never clean their room, but it's like, man, if you project like a belief of like, oh, man, I see how you try to clean that up and you're doing such a great job. And I know we could get better at this, but I see you really want to keep a tidy room clean. And don't you want to have a clean room? Because I want to have a clean room. And if this is how I feel when I have a clean room, and you start to you change the belief structure of what you believe is possible for them. And then they reflect that, they mirror that. It's just crazy how the beliefs that we have about ourselves and about others and about the world shape how it occurs for us, because if this makes sense, we're all just tuning into a frequency. So it's all the possibilities are there. You could have an awful negative life or a very positive, hope-filled life, but you have to decide which, tuner on the radio you're tuning into. Is it 96.7, the Fox, or is it like 88, whatever it is, like you can only pick one station to tune into at a time. But they're always there all the time. And both can be true for you. It could be true. And I could live out that narrative about Shay my whole life and it'd be miserable. It doesn't mean it's actually what's going on in her mind, but it could be true for me. And I get the fruit of that. And you do reap what you sow. You reap what you sow in your mind. You reap what you sow in the words you say, because it creates a reality, not in a weird woo-woo way, but it's like there is a reason why God created the heavens and the earth through speech, right? He could have created it through any other way. It's irrelevant how God creates the heaven and the earth to him. He could blink. He could sort of like reverse snap in the Avengers, only it brings everything back. But he chose to speak, right? He chose to speak. And I think that's something instructive about, and very much a Proverbs 18 or 19 thing, like death and life are in the power of the tongue. Like what you say, it's not that there's magic in what you say, but what you say is like a crystallization of your beliefs. It's like, I have thought this, I believe this, and now I'm speaking, now has become real because it's now something physical. It's a sound wave. And it's sort of just like this is what I believe. And that's what you're going to get. And you see it in marriages, you see it in finances, you see it in the health journey. Oh, I'm not a person that works out. Oh, I'm not a person that runs. bro, it's identity. You're speaking that over yourself. Like, what if you could become a runner? What if you liked running? Like, you could ask yourself these questions, and those things could become a reality too. And I'm sure you can think of a million examples of people who just really transformed their life because not because they finally did something different. They did, but that was the second step. The first hidden step was they believed something different first about themselves, that they were willing to try something different.
Hey, we're going to get back to the episode, but while I have you here, I wanted to ask you, would you consider helping a brother who's struggling in his life right now? Maybe it's a guy searching the internet to help save his marriage, his health, or his family. Maybe it's a man that's just behind you on this journey. And we know, statistically speaking, there are thousands of men doing this, and we know that there are probably men in your social circles that are struggling with some of these very same things. If you'd be willing to help, this is how you can help, and I promise it'll take less than 60 seconds. If you've gotten any value from this podcast so far, would you be willing to give us an honest review and subscribe to our channel, whatever channel you're listening on? If you want to take this to the next level, would you consider sending this link to a friend of yours who you know would benefit from listening to this show? Now, why would you do that? Because the more men that hear this content, the more marriages we can save, the more fathers we can help step up, and the more lives that we can change forever. This isn't just for the men. This is for the wives, the children, and the generations to come. So I want to say thank you so much for doing your part to help other men find the support that they need. Now let's get back to it. Yeah, man. I mean, I love that framework. You know, the story I'm telling myself, that me and my wife often use that in resolving conflict. You know, when she says something, I was like, hey, Sam, you know, when you said that, the story I'm telling myself is that I'm not a good husband, or you don't want me around, or that I'm not successful, or that I'm not smart, you know. And it's such a brilliant tool because it helps kind of get those words out, and it helps you kind of get distance from it, or your spouse hear how you've interpreted the words. And then they're like, oh, wait a minute, that's not what I meant at all. Help me rephrase that, you know, or that same framework for me, because one of the lies that I've always believed, stemming right back to my childhood, is that you're not smart, you're not an intellectual, because I wasn't great in school, and one of my sisters was really great in school, and so the very thing that stopped me I wanted to launch this career 4 or 5 years ago, and the thing that stopped me was, who's going to listen to you? You're not smart, right? You have nothing valuable to share. Why would anybody listen to you? Because you're not an intellectual. And so when I wrote down, the story that I'm telling myself is that I'm not smart. Could this be true? Or, you know, if I would have had this framework back then, is there something more true than that narrative? So good, man, because that is one thing that pinned me for a while until I could learn to release that, right? So huge,
powerful,
huge stuff. You know, changing your belief, and then, like you said, the doing is the second step. And I think you're a fan of Rich Litvin. I am as well. But he says confidence is the result, not the requirement, right? And so if you're listening to this today, don't expect to necessarily feel confident before you make the decision. There's going to be a little bit of white knuckling. You know, you grasp that belief, and you're like, okay, I think I can try this. You know, but what's going to be on the end of that decision? The result is going to be confidence, right? You don't wait for confidence, because you can't be confident with something you've never done before.
Yeah.
You know, I think might have been James Clear actually who said this as well, but nothing that's ever not been done before has ever been accomplished by confident people, because if the thing has never been done, how could anyone have confidence in doing it? So by virtue of doing it for the first time, you can't expect, so don't wait for it, right? Take action on these new beliefs, these new questions you're asking yourself. Man, it's powerful. So love that, man. So I know I just want to be cautious of our time, want to respect your time. So one last question for you. And now this is a question that I ask everybody on the show. And it's a bit of a morbid question, if you will. I like to think about death because I find that it informs me on how I ought to live in the present. And so if you will, for a moment, just picture with me, say, you know, unfortunately you pass away, and Shay, your wife, and your girls are, you know, the funeral has just ended, and they're just sitting around the table, and everyone had left, and they're sitting at home, sitting around the kitchen table, and they're reflecting on Graham, you know, dad, the husband he was, and the father he was. And you have this opportunity to have kind of like this out of body experience. You could be present in the room in spirit, or maybe, a fly on the wall, and you can hear the things that your daughters are saying about Dad and the man that he was and the father he was and the life that he lived. If you could hear what they were saying, what would you want them to say about you?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I would want them to say that Dad loved us unconditionally, believed in us, was our best friend, was a champion for us, that Dad was present, that he was full of joy, that he was selfless and generous, and that he loved God and loved others and just served his heart out to the end. That's basic. Just those things.
That's good. It's a big question, and not once have I ever heard anyone say, yeah, I want them to talk about how much money I made. I want them to talk about the empire that I built,
Yeah.
And so thank you for sharing that, man. I appreciate that. And that's good for anyone listening to hear from your mouth as someone who has accomplished a lot, to share, hey, at the end of my life, I just want to be present. I want my kids to know that I love them, that I showed up, that I was generous, that I was behind them 100%. Because at the end of the day, on the Dad Nation podcast, that's what we're about, man, is living our best life. And when that time comes, having absolutely no regrets on how we fathered our kids and loved our wives. So, Graham, thank you. Last question for you is, I know there's going to be people who want to get more of your stuff, support you, find you online. So, number one, where can we find you and how can we support you?
Yeah, man. On Instagram is probably the only place I hang out and chat regularly. So at the Graham Cochrane, you can message me there. Check out the show, the Graham Cochrane podcast, wherever you like to get your shows, or grahamcochrane.com.
Amazing. Well, you heard it, and if you're listening to this, I'm going to post all of his links on the on the show notes, or whether you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, you name it, it'll all be there. Check it out. Listen, Graham, thank you so much for your time, and again, just to come full circle, I just want to say thank you, just for the incredible work you're doing in a world where we're inundated with content and information, and not always people who are authentic and genuine and trustworthy. You are an honest voice, and you do great work, and you're a trustworthy leader. And I believe that you deserve all of the success that you've had, and I wish even more for you in the coming years, brother.
Thank you, Mitch. I appreciate you, man. This has been great.
Go on. Have a great day. We'll catch up soon.
Yes, sir.
Wow, what an incredible episode. Listen, if you are watching on YouTube today, I want to hear from you, okay? Leave it in the comments below. What was the big takeaway for you? What was that big aha moment? And let's start the conversation. If you've listened to this episode and you've decided that you want help today, if you need coaching, if you need some resources, feel free to please reach out to me. My email is mitchell@dadnationco.com. My website is dadnationco.com. You can hit me up on Instagram @dadnationco. And I've got a ton of resources for you. I'm here to help you, support you in any way I can, and to serve you in a powerful way. So check those links. I'll have them posted below. But other than that, listen, I'm here for you. I'm in your corner. Have an incredible week. We'll catch up soon.